welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I will be your host for this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, or any time you happen to be listening, because after all, it is your podcast. Now, joining me, this is going to be a work in progress episode. We haven't done one of them for a little while. Well, not probably since last week. But joining me tonight, or today, or this morning, from the Hill Game Company is Casey Hill, and Casey Hill has come here to talk about Arkon. And Arkon is it's going to be like a 2 to 4 player card fantasy battle strategic card game thing that he's going to come on and he's going to talk about. So so hi Casey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great.
It's good to have you on. We have got a few things to cover off. Going to talk a little bit about yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about this fantastic looking game that you've come up with, and just find out a little bit more about the campaign when you're setting it off and everything like that. Now, obviously, the reason that we do this podcast is because we quite simply feel that there's not enough podcasts out there about board gaming.
Yeah.
We've checked iTunes, we've checked Stitcher. Apparently there's only 3 board game podcasts in Scotland. There's us, there's the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast, and apparently there's also the First Player Marker, which I don't think we've spoken to them yet, so we have to at some point. And the other reason that we do this is because we like to get people like Casey on the show, because we're always interested in finding out about new games that are going to be coming to a Kickstarter near you. But one of the first things we'd like to find out a little bit about is your actual history with the hobby. So while everybody sits back, relaxes, and has themselves a nice drink of tea, which is what I'm going to be doing, Casey, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the world of pressed and printed trees, please?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me. And so for games, I come from a family of 7 people. So with a family of 7 people, growing up, we played all sorts of different games, and that ranged from tabletops to RPGs to, really the gamut. That was kind of, I think, one of the unifying things. When we were all young, we would just all get around games, and a lot of those were, standard staples when I was young, the kind of monopolies and stuff like that. But we also created a whole bunch of them, new ones, right? My dad was an entrepreneur and really kind of drove forward, always generating new games, and so it was kind of a mix of playing the standard staples and kind of getting exposed to creating our own. And I had kind of a lot of a writing background. I was really into writing, creative writing, fantasy writing. So I was putting a lot of those together. And then what kind of led to the creation of Arkon and to this first kind of project was kind of a combination of getting the bug of entrepreneurship and kind of combining that with the passion for tabletops and with games. So when I was in college, I was really into Magic the Gathering, pretty common staple of the industry.
Right, okay.
and so I was buying and selling Magic the Gathering cards as well as playing, and I realized that what I was doing, I could share this information. I could write about how to buy and sell cards that might be valuable for other people. And so I kind of started down that journey, and I built some relationships with some wholesalers. Anyways, to make a long story short, I wrote an e-guide that went on to sell over 1,000 copies. And it was just, a small, short e-guide, but it had, overwhelmingly positive. We had, I think, only 2 returns or negative feedbacks ever for that product. And so I kind of realized, like, wow, this is awesome. On one hand, I was working my little part-time job at a phone center, and then I was making 3 times as much doing something that was super interesting, which was selling a how to sell Magic the Gathering guide. So that kind of got that fixed on me, and I was actually paying for most of my college with what I was making from that side gig. And so I was like,
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Dial it back though, Casey.
yeah.
Tell us about the games that happened in the Hill family. What were the name of these games and what kind of games that they were? You don't get off that easily by saying that you sat there and made some games and not tell us a couple of these games. You said you played Monopoly, and you invented a couple of games. So what were these? What were these other games that you got? Kind of you invented and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So starting off, me and all my brothers were really into tabletops, Dungeons and Dragons, RPGs. So
Mhm.
we wrote and created a lot of campaigns in that arena, right? We would do handmade campaigns, different rule variants of Dungeons and Dragons, and that was, one kind of area. The second one I would call is kind of like game modification. So we
All
would
right.
take certain games like Risks, we would invent new cards, new effects, and seek how we could kind of like change the dynamics in those sort of setups.
Yeah.
Um, and then we had, so my dad ran electronical engineering company, and so he had tons of power tools. So we would design all sorts of different boards and all sorts of, special parts for all sorts of different games. And I mean, I don't know if we had really like one particular one when we were young that we really kind of ran with. I think there was
Hmm.
a lot of turnover. We were kind of just developing and making miniatures and pieces. Um, and so it was kind of an sundry. But we would be down there in his shop all the time, just creating different stuff from math games to figurine games, movement games. We
Yeah.
one that comes to mind right now is we made Wizard's Chess, which was basically just a bunch of different figurines and on a chessboard, and we had like 12 different races that we had set up. Uh, but there was a bunch that we kind of toyed around with. So
Your dad was quite encouraging for you to use your imagination then, and when it came to the games, was he a bit of an inventor as well as being like an entrepreneur? If he had a workshop, was he just constantly turning out kind of new stuff to try and sell and things like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. He's definitely always been very much the inventor type, and
Yeah.
whenever we had projects and different stuff, he was always the first one to collaborate with us, pretty much on whatever genre it was. Whether it was writing, books, or whether it was, different things that we've dabbled in through the years. He always was kind of helping us out, and because he had his shop, we also
Hmm.
had like a lot of resources. So yeah, definitely super instrumental for sure.
So was he like the dad in kind of Gremlins? He had like the bathroom buddy and stuff like that, like the machine you could. You know, press this button and have. Was there stuff? Yeah, I mean, in that kind of atmosphere, of your other siblings, have they gone on to be quite creative, kind of quite inventive, kind of have the same kind of entrepreneurial kind of take on life that you've obviously had as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the other ones are necessarily. I mean, my older brother is working on this project of Arkon with us, and he's was, a key designer and was really instrumental in kind of the development process. So absolutely, my older brother Tyler was definitely very involved with that. And my other siblings, I mean, they all kind of went on to be creative in their own ways. My younger brother is a developer, and so, with coding, that's kind of, it's like a whole world of possibilities once you know that language. So, I think they kind of dabbled each in their own arenas. I think me, my dad, and my older brother probably were the ones that were most vested on the specific kind of, gaming front and gaming design. But I think they all kind of utilized that creative
Yeah.
spirit in their own ways.
Okay. Okay. I mean, um, you said obviously the Magic Guide thing. Did you, as well as the business side of the Magic the Gathering, did you are you one of these people that kind of developed like a healthy collection or an unhealthy collection, as some people do? Or did you kind of keep it at arm's length? You had like a couple of hundred cards, or were you one of the guys that had like 20, 30,000 kind of Magic cards at your disposal?
It's funny you asked that because I was listening to another episode, and you were asking the guy like, did you have like 1,000 or like 5,000 cards? And I was thinking, oh man, we're talking like 20, 30, 50,000. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we
I,
had we
I
had
just think it's a problem that people, they've just let Magic the Gathering kind of
but let me
Just grow.
but let me tell you this, Richard. So for the last 4 years that I've played, even though the collection has grown, I haven't spent a cent on it, because basically I only do drafting, and there's prize supports at the various stores. So as long as you're consistently getting, between first and third place, you can kind of play in perpetuity. So as the collection grew as a hobby, and I haven't actually played too much Magic the last, 2 years since I've kind of started working a full-time job as well as doing the Arkon game. But yeah, when I played in the past, I did a multiple year span where I didn't spend a dime. So I always benefit. I didn't sink too much money into the into the hobby in that sense.
How many cards do you have, Casey?
Uh, well, right now I probably have none, right? Because
Oh, okay, that's a good cop up. How many did you have, Casey?
yeah, I mean, I had boxes and boxes, because you got to understand, I was selling them too, right? So I would pick up other people's collections and I would buy 10,000 cards, and sort through them, and had a whole specific process there. So at its height, I just had boxes and boxes and boxes.
So, I mean, do you kind of keep? Is there the excitement of going through a box and realizing that somebody's got like kind of like ultra uncommon, ultra rare cards? Was there still the kind of the fan of the game to say, wow, I could really put together a really healthy deck from this lot? Or were you kind of thinking, well, actually, I can market value states that I could sell it for this, I could sell this for this, I could sell this for this? Was it kind of a mixture between, um, was it kind of a mixture between that kind of mindset?
Yeah, for me, I definitely think that, I enjoyed Magic almost kind of like in a casual context, the actual playing of the game. For me, I really like drafting. Everyone starts at the same playing field. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how many cards you've bought or purchased. It's more of the strategic, like mechanic side of it, which I think is what resonated with me. And so, when it actually came to the boxes and the collections, I actually never, played standard or modern or any of those formats that required you to accumulate cards to build decks. That was more on the financial, the business side was the actual collecting. And then
Hmm.
for me, the fun was the drafting, was everyone kind of starting in an open environment and playing. And I'm also the one who is, Magic Light. My brother is currently a gold level pro player, and they fly him all around the world. He's been
Wow.
to, Japan, and he's been to Belgium, and they pay for flights for people. Gold is the second to the highest level of kind of professional player, and so he does very well in that circuit. So he's the hardcore Magic. I'm definitely the casual.
Those big brothers, they're just gonna shove it down your throat when they're better than you at something.
Yeah, no,
He can't
we're
just be normal. He can't, he's got to go away and do his old jetting off around the world with his little gold champion badge and stuff like. No, but I mean, no, I mean that's cool. I mean, if you as the old saying goes, happy is the man who's paid for his hobbies. I mean, I take it that's what he just does full time. He just goes out and plays Magic. He doesn't do anything else.
no, he's a quantum physicist. So he's a
So he's brainy as well. This is just
yeah, he's a quantum physicist, and then he kind of does magic on the side, and we rope him in for the mechanics discussions when it comes to Archon. He's the kind of mind that is just very good for like during the development phases.
mm,
The way that we kind of went about developing Archon was we kind of focused on specific areas that we thought were really instrumental, like interaction, replayability, and we'd kind of, run a lot of these open playtests. And then with that feedback, we'd sit down and we'd say, okay, like, how can we really create more interaction in this environment? And that's where he was, a super key piece of that puzzle of helping us implement dynamics that really kind of helped elicit those kind of results. So, yeah, he was definitely a key for us to get to where we are today.
do you get do you get much of a chance to then sit down and kind of play some games yourself while obviously Archon's developing? You guys seem super focused on it. Do you still kind of kick back and just have a nice little relaxed kind of cardboard session?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And my wife really enjoys gaming as well. Just this
Alright.
last couple of weeks, we've played Mysterium, Betrayal at House on the Hill, Karmika, Star Realms is a favorite of ours. It's in some ways Star Realms has a lot of commonality just in terms of being like a small single box card game.
Yeah.
Arkon's not a deck builder like Star Realms is, but I think that Star Realms is a very well designed, very interactive, high quality game that's kind of a similar like sizing, portability kind of setup to Arkon.
Do
So
you play online on Star Realms?
no, I know there is online, but we've mostly stuck to just kind of our gaming groups, if you will.
Really?
Um,
No. I mean, we no. I have the app, and I must confess that since I got the app, the even kind of like sitting down, the physical side of it is sometimes easier just to have the app and do the kind of the pass and play kind of thing. I think the only thing that um, irks me about playing Star Realms, the physical version, is the scoring on it.
sure.
Sometimes you're just
Yeah.
tempted to kind of rip out like a um, kind of rip out a kind of an empty a Magic the Gathering kind of score counter. You know, the apps that you get for your phones. just
Totally.
just doing that, or just get like a couple of 20-sided dice or whatever, just to kind of keep an eye on the score.
Totally.
Mysterium
Yeah.
um is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything? I mean, is there anything that you're kind of keeping your eyes on at the moment that's out there just now? I mean, obviously you're focusing on the game, but is there anything else you've kind of seen recently you thought, well, actually, I'd like to have a shot of that. I'd like to have a play around with that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, this Christmas I have a long list. I think there's some staples that we just haven't got to. I mean, first and foremost, Pandemic Legacy. I mean, that's exalted as, the game, number one on BGG and
Never,
hear all these
never heard of it.
things. Um,
Yeah, I mean, no, it is kind of like, yeah. I mean, are you season oneing or are you season twoing?
I kind of want to get both. I don't know if that's gluttonous here, but
I
uh,
think, yeah, it's Christmas time. Knock yourself out. I mean, if you're
yeah.
gonna do kind of global biological disasters, then you might as well go all in.
Yeah, and Matt Leacock, who's the founder of Pandemic, he's also just I think a super seminal figure in the cooperative gameplay space in general.
Hmm.
We run a blog. I run a game design blog on our website, and
Hmm.
we had him on for just like a written interview kind of setup.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I think he's super impactful. So I'm also really curious to try it out from that end. Obviously, I've played regular Pandemic,
Yeah.
but I'm really curious to kind of explore that other piece. I have a lot of respect for him as a designer.
Anything else that you're looking? I mean, have you looked at the likes of, say, like Charterstone, or
Oh yeah,
there's, yeah,
yeah, totally. That one's on our
I
website as well from Jamie.
yeah. Are you have you written about it, or you actually managed to get your hands on a copy yet?
I don't have my hands on a copy. I really want one.
I really want one.
I had him on. Jamie was on for also just like Matt on our blog. We have an episode, a written interview on game design from him as well. But yeah, I've talked to him about that before, wanting to get my hands on a copy of Charterstone. And looks super interesting. And I also he's another one of those people that just always seems to churn out really high quality stuff. So yeah. I have not yet, but definitely that's another one on the wish list, as well as Terraforming Mars is another high one on my I hear a lot of
Yeah.
good stuff about. So I have a lot, man. I wanna play them all.
That's the best thing about, see, when I don't know about you, but see, when you got to when I got to that age of kind of like 13, 14, and the kind of the magic man's magic is gone. So it's kind of like your parents are involved in Christmas, and you don't want to get toys because you want to be cool. But it seems like now it's like I can just potentially just ask for toys for Christmas, but grown-up toys, and justify it completely that they're providing me with an educational, cooperative atmosphere, and it gets everybody around the table, and we're all being sociable. So what's not to love about it? And it's absolutely fantastic. If I,
Yeah.
if I wrote down my actual Christmas list, there would definitely not be slippers on there. There would definitely not be a bathrobe. There would not be a nose hair clipper. There would not be a new frying pan. None of those things would be there. There would be Charterstone would be on there for starters. right up the top. Pandemic season one, because I want to play season one before I play season two.
Right.
You know, I'd like to get my hands on Dinosaur Island. I'd like to get my
Ooh,
hands on, I've heard some really good, some really, really good things about that. Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
you know,
I love
it's
there's just so much good stuff out there. I mean, it
it's
almost like
ridiculous.
takes a lifetime to play through it all.
I'm a kid in a I'm a kid in a candy shop again, and I'm losing enough teeth as it is without without this barrage of sweet, beautiful cardboard. I mean, as because of the space that you're in, because of the design space, this is when we kind of go back into the serious questions.
Sure, sure.
Join us after the break when we find out about Casey's motivation. No, because of the space that you're in, because you're involved playing a lot of card games, is that do you find yourself kind of checking out the kind of the competition to see kind of what's out there when you see like another card game coming to Kickstarter? Are you kind of sniffing around, just to see what the mechanics are involved? I mean, have you played Ashes, Rise of the Phoenix Born?
I have not played Ashes, but that's another game that is very high on my list. I'm a huge fan Plaid Hat Games. I just love their art. I mean,
Yes,
I'm a big art advocate, and art is like
yes.
a big thing for me, and that's something we tried to infuse in Arkon. And I think they're one of the best in the industry. So I have immense respect for their art team, and that's just another one on the bucket list. But I definitely want to play it.
Okay. You have to play it.
Yeah, I
I would
do,
say, you
and
have to play it. No,
yeah,
it's
and to your question though, when we developed Archon initially, it's just this is kind of constantly a thing we're doing is we're just, like I said, since I was young, we're kind of creating ideas. And we put together Archon starting with just a deck of playing cards. And it was kind of built around this concept that, we saw in a lot of games, there was a lot of like dead cards. Like this game is good later game, this game is good in this situation. And we wanted to try to create kind of a model where you would have just flexible use, and so that's kind of how it initially came into birth. And then
mm,
as we went through the designing process, so it started with like multi-use cards, we wanted that to be a key piece. And then we started realizing, as we went through and as we started to play test, hey, how can we add, depth of strategy? How can we add replayability? How can we make it streamlined and simple? Because good games also, I think, have that ability for you to be able to pick them up, right? If the barrier of entry is impossible, then you lose out on a lot of people that might be able to enjoy it. So we wanted to tackle that. But during that 2 years process that we've been kind of developing it, that's where I think we've really been kind of refining mechanics. And we look all the time, as many games as you can play, I think makes you a better designer, right? Because you're
yeah,
exposed to it, and it helps you make your content more unique. And more differentiated. So we're always trying to, play through, and I've probably done, 50 to 75 new games during that period. But as we're chatting about, there's still, hundreds that I haven't got a chance to. So I think you always incorporate what you learn from those experiences into the process of design. But we didn't really go about it in a way of like looking at games and then saying like, hey, how can we do something like different from Magic?
yeah,
We really kind of designed a game at a very very kind of like threadbare level. And then we said, wow, this is actually really enjoyable. How can we expand this out and make it more robust? And then as we kind of went through the evaluation process, I try to be very kind of categorical. And what I mean by that is looking at, okay, what is this feedback that we got from these 3 local gaming stores we went to, what is at a core is what are they saying, and then glean that out and say, okay, this is about interaction. We saw that this guy was on his phone during when it wasn't his turn, and then so we pull that out and realize like, okay, we need to make sure that we put in something that makes sure that people are really engaged
yeah,
on every opportunity. And that's where bidding came about, which is another kind of core piece of what it is now. And as soon as we made that transition, it was huge. I mean, our playtest groups, bidding was a massive hit in terms of incorporation versus kind of the more conventional resource system. Pay this many resources for this thing. this kind of auction style bidding embedded inside of a kind of flexible use card game, I think that was both a differentiator for what makes Arkon kind of unique, but it was also something, I think most importantly, that really made it so that everyone was really engaged on every turn. And we saw that difference, and we saw that in our feedback slips that we were getting back during those playtests. And so we were really excited. We knew, like, okay, this is the right direction, and we kind of continued to build on that.
How much of an influence has your brother been on the design of the game in terms of, when you get to the level that he's at, he's obviously going to have some access to kind of behind the curtain. Was it a double-edged sword? And sometimes did you have to take his feedback and his thoughts on board, but at the same time be willing to kind of draw a line in the sand and say, actually, we need to kind of make sure we're keeping our own kind of identity, and as you say, not just doing something different from Magic for the sake of doing something different from Magic?
Yeah, I think what Tyler was exceptional at is he has a very good analytical mind for things like balancing, right?
Yeah.
He understands probabilities and the way that cards interact, and so that was where is really instrumental. And me, my dad, and Tyler, when we started out on this project, we made it really clear for all of us that, you have to leave your ego at the door. The objective is to make the best game. It's not about getting your idea pushed in here. It's about when we bring this product to playtesters, what resonates. That is honest. That's the litmus test of a game, right? Is when you bring it out to market, do people like it, right? Or is it fun? Is it different? Is it unique? And so I think that in order to do that, you have to be very customer driven. You have to be very much putting in the mindset of, this isn't about your idea or my idea. We just have to be able to take and throw away ideas kind of at will. And I think everyone on the team knew that, and I kind of tried to set that as a very clear standard initially. And so I think in that sense, we all worked well, and we had different spheres that we focused on. Like I said, I think Tyler was very good at the balancing and introducing this mechanic. Is it going to lead to other related problems? Because that's another big thing in game design, right? You change one thing, but it affects this other area. So that's another hurdle that we worked on. But I think that's where it's also really important to have a design cycle that allows you to really robustly test the thing, running a bunch of internal playtests, but I think most importantly outside playtests, and then taking that feedback. And what I've always told people is it's about, I think, aggregating trends. So if one person says this is imbalanced, right, or even 5 people say this is imbalanced, you write it down, you record it, but you can't just change things every time you get a comment. But when you have 20, 30 people, 40 people from playtest that say the win condition is happening like this, then you need to pull that out and you need to say, okay, this is a trend, and we need to address this specific problem because there is a balancing issue. And so we ran our playtests like that. We essentially, looked for those trends, and we always had slips that people filled out after they did playtests. What did they like? What did they dislike? How was the game won? And we gathered all of that data and continually looked at it and tried to refine it. And then, encourage people after they played the game to go to Board Game Geek, leave feedback. That's something actually I kind of messed up on. I did that way too late in the cycle. Out of all of our playtesting, I started that about 2 months ago, realizing, oh no, Board Game Geek, I need to have all of these, we've had so many people playtest this. I need to get their feedback. And so now I'm reaching back out to all of these emails and saying, hey, please leave a review, based on what you thought. And it's been phenomenal. Everyone who's left feedback has been really helpful. But yeah, that's another thing I think is important. And Board Game Geek ratings is another kind of controversy that you could stumble into. But I think it is good to get people to write about what their experiences is, what they like, what they don't like. Because it's all about providing information to the buyer and making sure that they understand what they're getting.
Was it easy for you to get playtest groups together? Again, because of being, Tyler's involvement in that. Did you find it easier to kind of get involved in groups, get people involved, get the playtesting together and things like that, because of the connections that you had then?
So that's an interesting question. Getting playtests together, no problem. But
Hmm.
the important piece is not just getting playtests, it's getting non-biased playtests, right? So we
Yeah.
have lots of connections, but if it's friends, if it's people you even know from industry, the problem
Yeah.
is those people aren't going to give you, unbiased feedback. They're like, "Oh, you're making a game, that's so fun." So really, the highest quality playtests, we're going to local gaming stores and saying, "Hey, we're a local designer. We're bringing this game out to Kickstarter. We'd love to have a game night," right? And then you get, say 7 or 8 people, you bring a couple decks, and you just
Yeah.
start running. And that feedback, I think, was the best. And we had, I don't know total to date, but I think we've done at least maybe 60 of those type of events. And so that kind of feedback, I think, is really great.
Was it maybe sometimes a case of saying like, Tyler, stay in the van? Because
No,
if they know who he is, it's like it's going to be a different. Is it? It's to get the feedback, as you said, as opposed to getting some kind of like somebody kind of saying, "Oh, this is really good. This is amazing," because of whoever's kind of involved. The kind of the sycophantic kind of praise that people are just trying to be nice because they want to kind of be nice
sure,
because they know you guys kind of are kind of around.
exactly, exactly.
What I mean, why? I know it's the stupidest question of the night is going to be why a card game and why not a worker placement game, or why not a miniatures game, or why was there a temptation? I mean, was this one of the games that came to fruition? I mean, do you have, or was this one of the easiest ones to kind of get off the ground and get going?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and I think that there was a ton of different types, directions we could have gone, and mechanics we could have gone. I really feel like right now in the market, having a really high quality, fast paced, quick, very portable game, again, kind of Star Realm-esque, in that capacity, has a lot of value. I think that there is so many good games out there, but I do notice there's kind of a trend towards slightly heavier games, and a little bit upscale price point. So bringing in something that is, a little bit more manageable, just kind of like a smaller box game, but still has that rich strategy that you can bring, you know, slide it in your pocket, right? I mean, this is going to come in a tuck box, so having something that's
Yeah,
portable, but still has that depth, I think that was appealing to me. I think a lot when I'm thinking about games of accessibility, right? And I think that there is some advantages to having something in that environment that's just really accessible because it's transportable. You can take it wherever you want, and also in the game design itself, right? Because it's played from one central deck, as you can imagine, it's also something that, we've striven really hard to not have a high barrier of entry, right? So that someone doesn't have to take 2 hours to learn the rules and pick this up. And I love all sorts of different games, including those that are extensive,
yeah,
and those that are shorter. But that was kind of the idea. I think it was from a business standpoint. It was like, hey, I think there's an opportunity, here in the market for this type of game. And then I think there's also just the coincidental that when we built this, and we went out, we kind of had that light that clicked that said, "Hey, this is resonating. This is a good game," and we're churning out all of these different things. But I think before you even get the outside validation, there's the internal validation. For me at least, this is my first stride out into putting out our name. This is our brand, and so to me that's huge, right? This is the first thing that people associate with you. Whatever quality that you put out there, that's going to be what's tied to your name and your company. And so, um, that's where the quality, I think, component is super big. So those
yeah.
are kind of some of the factors, I guess.
Before, obviously, for the mechanic side of things, have you thought about kind of expansions and stuff like that? I mean, is that a kind of an idea for yourselves as well? Because let's face it, Magic the Gathering is all about the meta game. It's all about the continual change of the meta game and constantly releasing new decks and new packs and stuff like that. So for somebody who is coming into this, obviously going into Magic, you're having to potentially spend a reasonable amount of money to get involved in that space at all. I
Right.
mean, with regards to Arkon, I mean, are you looking at this from a let's get the game out, let's get the game live, and then is there expansions you're thinking about, or are you thinking, well, let's let's start with a set deck and see how we go with that? What was your kind of your thoughts behind that?
I'm laughing to myself because, my dad, if he was here, would be jumping up and down. He's always been the huge, like, pushing for expansion, and we're gonna do this and this and
Yeah.
this. And I'm always like, hey, let's get through hurdle one first. But yeah, the answer to that question, I think, is that we definitely, all the time, our wheels are churning about, hey, we could add this mechanic, we could do activated abilities in this context, we could do this. So that list is always accumulating. But my focus is very much, again, on getting this first game out to market. And once, if the community and if the people receive that and they love it, absolutely, we'll expand. And that's where, setting really strong core mechanics, and this is something that I think Magic does a phenomenal job of,
Yeah.
is their core mechanics are very strong. So as the game has grown, they've been able to adapt and play with those in so many ways because their phases and how the game is structured is very concrete. And so that was, again, something that we focused on, having those strong fundamentals so we could scale the game up. But I think that there's always this thing of reality. You need to get it out there, and you need to make sure that it's received by the community and by the people. And so that's where my head's at. My is at, let's get through, let's run the Kickstarter. And if we have traction and we have people that are passionate about it, then we'll be more than happy to continue to add on things. And there'll be no end, I'm sure, to what we could connect. But we're definitely not looking at taking it any kind of like trading card game angle. If
Yeah.
anything, it would just be, another game, an attachment, like a Dominion expansion or something like that.
Yeah. No, I've seen recently, and this is myself, and it's is that there are Kickstarters that are going out there that seem to already have kind of like expansions and things like that in there as almost like stretch goals kind of thing, or additional purchases and things like that. And sometimes it's wondering, well, if that's an expansion, why not just put it in the main game?
Yeah,
If this is your first releasing a new IP or a new game, put it in the game,
yeah, totally.
kind of
And
thing.
And I think another thing is just design costs. I mean, I'm not privy to all of the rates that every game designer pays, but for our project, we are working with some really high-end artists and graphic designers, and that kind of stuff's not cheap. So before you go and you sink thousands and thousands of more dollars into additional art for new cards and new expansions, where my head is at is you need to kind of do the proof of concept on the front end. So
Yeah, I've
that's
seen.
that's
Yeah,
that's another side of it.
yeah. No, no. Again, I've seen. I've seen a lot of Kickstarters that have, a lot of expansions, and then when you speak to people that have actually got the game, they say, well, yeah, I play the core game so many times. My time is limited. I have a limited time to play the core game, so the expansions have usually ended up just staying in the box, and I haven't actually gone ahead and kind of had the chance to kind of play them.
Yeah,
And I also, and you'll be able, yeah, I mean, you'll know this because of the kind of the play testing that you've done,
sure.
is that you find new strategies. If you limit what people are able to use, then people will find new ways to twist and turn different strategies and almost create new strategies that you haven't even considered. I
Yeah,
mean, I play, as said already, I play a lot of Star Realms online against, and I've got probably a group of about 10 people that we play with on a regular basis. And there's the option always when you select the online challenge to go ahead with the 3 or 4 different expansions that you offer. But sometimes the best, most fraught games are the ones which are just for the core game, because you know exactly what's going to be potentially be coming out as a card. They know what's going to be coming out as potentially as a card, and the whole entire strategy changes. You start to almost play it in a kind of a chess-like manner. If you see a particular card, you're going to take that. If you see the recycling station, it doesn't matter what which other factions you're going for. You're picking up the
You're taking the
recycling
recycling
station.
station.
Or if you see like the brain world, you're going for the brain world, kind of thing. Or if you see, anything like that, the last port of call, you'll pick that up. These are all things that everybody. The strategy becomes an awful lot tighter because people recognise the cards. Whereas sometimes on an expansion to a game, there's so many different variables going about, and I guess I can see why when you're doing like Magic tournaments, they say, well, you're kind of drafting from this deck, or you're playing with these set decks. This is what you're allowed to do, because otherwise, how easy is it to then kind of formulate a strategy? I was just interested to see where your head was in terms of expansions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment, though, that the limitations I think is huge, and that's one of the things when you're playing a game from a 52 card deck, right? You start to learn, and in Arkon there's 4 copies of each card, right? So you start to learn the different possible iterations, and I think it does have very much that kind of analytical side of you're now familiar with kind of all of these cards, and now it's how can you use them in all of these different kind of combinations and iterations. So yeah, I definitely think that limitation can breed kind of increased strategic depth, 100%.
Okay. I've got a deck of art from Arkon in my hands, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm about to start playing. I mean, how do I go about playing? What are the mechanics?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the important thing. And you're not allowed to say it's like Magic, or you accept you do this instead. You've mentioned the bidding. You've mentioned the bidding side of things, which I'm kind of fascinated about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how would you go about playing around?
Yeah, so the objective in Archon is that you're trying to bring 4 clans, one of each or 4 of one type, into play to win. And the way that you bring a clan into play is that you place it down, and every card, both clan and non-clan cards in the game, has an influence value, right? So you can think of that as your resources, your currency value. So when you have a
Okay.
card in your hand, you place it out, and you're placing cards face down to try to win that clan, to try to exert influence and win that clan in a bid. And the other players place cards face down, and think of it like an auction, right? Whoever flips and has the highest value, they put those cards in the discard pile and they take the card. So
Mm-hmm.
one component of it is kind of the strategy and posturing behind trying to win these cards. Now, the idea again with the multi-use of the cards though is that cards can be played as actions, they can be played as counters, or they can be played as the clan cards can be played for the actual bids. And so and all cards have different types, and you can see what types they can be played as on the bottom. But the concept here is that you could play a card that might be able to take a card from an opponent's hand, as an example, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
card can be played for that kind of tactical benefit, or you can use it to try to win a clan that's going to move you closer to winning. Um, and then the third usage for any action card, there's just a simple matching system when it comes to counters. So if you have the same card that they have, you can play that out, and that will negate an effect. So you're kind of constantly thinking in your head, do I move closer to the win condition? Do I keep cards back to kind of defend my hand? Or
Mm-hmm.
do I kind of play offensively to strategically increase my position by either taking cards and giving me more options, or trying to use my actions to take other clans that are on the boards for other players and bring those in. Um, so at a core level, that's the concept. You're trying to race to get those clans out while trying to think of how to use those cards. And for the vast majority, there's a couple little bit slightly more complex, but a lot of the cards are kind of very straightforward in terms of take a card from a player's hand, or take a clan from the table and put it in your hand. And so a lot of the strategy is kind of imbued in what order you're playing things, and how you're kind of thinking about the short versus long game of how to kind of approach it. So that's it, like in a 30-second nutshell uh, of what you're trying to
That
do inside of Archon.
that's it. Podcast over, folks. Everybody go home.
You're experts.
Casey's finished. We're not in an elevator though, unless you're in an elevator. Are you in an elevator?
Uh,
Um, I mean, your art. Okay, the artwork side of things.
Yeah. So basically, here's how it started out. We were looking for art, and we went on to DeviantArt, which has a lot of really talented artists. We put up a
Yeah.
job listing. We got like 100 people that reached out to us. It was crazy. We didn't hire any of them. It wasn't the right fit for whatever reason. We went through a ton of portfolios. It just didn't connect. And so the next thing was I just started to research people on DeviantArt. Like I started to look for their art, and started to connect it with a number of designers, some super talented people. But a lot of the people, especially the ones that had worked on Magic the Gathering, were just very expensive. I mean, you're talking $1,000 plus per piece, kind of price
Yeah.
ranges. So that was kind of untenable for us at our current stage. But eventually we connected with one of them who was friends with another individual. Um, and he basically said shoot him an email. So we shot him an email, started a conversation, and he ended up being our lead artist. And then about halfway through our project, he also started doing work for the Game of Thrones TCG. Um, at
Oh,
which
right. Okay.
and so at which point his prices jumped up dramatically. But that was kind of a cool thing, and we were just thrilled with everything he produced. I mean, just an incredibly talented person. And we had a number of other artists that we brought on board to do like map design, to do graphic design. And our graphic designer had previously worked and had exposure with both Pathfinder and Magic the Gathering, so some pretty big brands that they'd
Yeah.
worked in graphic design work. So just a really talented bunch, and I think that honestly we got really lucky that personalities wise too, they were just all really nice people that were very reasonable and were really cared about the project and wanted to put in that extra effort to refine things. It wasn't like you having to hound them and say like I need this done. I mean, they really took passion in what we were trying to build and the storyline and creating that. And so, yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful in my first foray into hiring and working with contractors. I'm sure not everyone gets quite that lucky when it comes to just having, those kind of personalities. But I'm definitely very grateful for who we put together on that team. And so it's been a journey. All these pieces usually take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes even longer per piece. And so
Yeah.
that's, as you can imagine, it's many, many, many months are passing, and so you're using prototypes and you're using placeholders while you're playtesting
You're
and
waiting
working
for
the
the
other
final.
sides of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Is it important that you're going to be pushing with a consistent art style? Because one thing you can say about Magic. Okay, no, I'm not going to say nasty things about Magic, but it can be inconsistent. Okay, and one of the things I love about Ashes Rise of the Phoenix Spawn is my entire deck looks the same in terms of art styles, and I love that. I love, sometimes I'll just lay it out, and then just look at it because the art style is very, very consistent all the way through. Is that what you're trying to do with Arkon as well? Is to try and keep the art style consistent as you kind of go through, develop the game, and kind of add more to the game as you go on?
yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things again that we really take pride in. I posted pictures of our clans, and I asked like board game communities. I said, we had two artists that drew each of these two clans. Can you tell who drew what? And about 50% of them got it wrong. So I think that was a good test that
That is good, yeah.
it was hard for them to differentiate. But yeah, if you check out, we have a print and play that's available so people can kind of see all the artwork. And I think that the two artists that we used for all those sketches did a really phenomenal job of kind of just having it be very synchronous. So that's definitely something that I had that kind of specific artistic vision in mind, and I think both of them were able to hold to that really well. So definitely important for me.
And why? I mean, why Kickstarter?
Yeah, yeah,
I
Kickstarter.
mean,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say because you guys you kind of seem switched on, and you said you've got kind of there's family backing in there as well, and you've obviously come so far with getting the art and everything like that. I mean, is the Kickstarter there because is it for you? Is it kind of like a double side of things? Is it to help raise kind of the profile and awareness of the game in the first place, as well as looking at funding, or is it a if we don't do it on Kickstarter, it's not going to appear?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of a couple reasons for Kickstarter. One, I really do believe in product validation. I try to
Yeah.
not be naive enough to think that that this one thing that you create is just guaranteed going to work. You need to make sure that the community and the people that are playing these games and that are enjoying these products, they think so too. And so Kickstarter is a
Hmm.
way for you to do that. It's a way for you to put your product out and say, this is what we're about. And let the people decide, right? Let the pocketbooks decide, because I think unfortunately what happens a lot of times is people come in, and we think about that with our Kickstarter goal too. We're running a Facebook event and we're trying to bring in traffic, and we're going to make our goal conditional on that. We're not just picking a number out of a hat and saying $50,000. you know if you have $5,000 or $10,000 of support, and you just say $50,000, then you risk taking all those people and having that be a flop halfway through. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think that one of it is the validation aspect, and then I think too there is a little bit of that idea of just bringing it out and kind of publicity and exposing it to people. I think Kickstarter's changed a lot from what I've seen over the years. It used to be kind of like, hey, we got this cool concept, fund us to make it. And
Yeah.
and now if you're not about 90% done, you're going to be in tough shape, because there's some big dogs that are 90% done that have products that look incredible and videos that look incredible. Um,
Yeah.
so you're up against some tough competition. So I think a couple different factors there.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, I know you've had the friend of mine, Mark Neidlinger, was on your kind of your design blog, and
Yeah.
I mean the stuff that he produced for Epoch was just phenomenal in
Yes.
terms of the quality of the components from the kind of the very very beginning.
Yeah.
Which is and you're right. I mean, it is people have a kind of an expectation of what they rock up on Kickstarter, and I see people get caught short. I've seen there's posts on Facebook groups today about guys that are launching their Kickstarter and saying, "Hey, we launched our Kickstarter, and what do you think?" And people are going in and just saying, "Did you tell anyone, show anyone else this campaign before you press the live button?" Which is unfortunate, but I think that there there's not people that are wanting to crucify and stick you up there and kind of knock you down onto the ground. There are a lot of people who are just very open and honest and are willing to give you an opinion, provided that you're willing to reach out to them, and that's why there's all these kind of Facebook groups, which is a really really good idea. I don't know if there's many other industries out there that would have, even the video game industry. I wouldn't imagine kind of Shigeru Miyamoto or anyone like that going,
Yeah.
here's going to be the latest newest Nintendo IP, and we're gonna, what do you guys think of the ideas, and putting it out there and letting some, essentially a public group go in there and have a look at the rules and have a look at the graphics, and then come back with some very brutal honesty
Yeah.
in kind of some cases. Um, has it been
Totally.
has it been important for you to kind of get the word out there as quickly as you can? Because when is it you're thinking about launching?
So we're going to be launching on February 1st, barring some sort of setback, but that's when we're set
Okay.
and ready to go, is February
Yeah.
1st. So pretty soon, right? In under 2 months now, we're planning on flipping the switch. So
Yeah.
it's been the last, I think, really, I would say 3 to 6 months is when I've kind
Hmm.
of shifted my brain from design mode to marketing mode.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I have a background, what I do, I'm a small business consultant, and I work heavily in like marketing, right? So we do a lot of marketing type of stuff. So I have a background there, but to me, the vast majority of this was just spent on design, because again, my philosophy was, if the underlying product isn't phenomenal, then it doesn't matter, right? You could have the best marketing out there and you might get your product maybe even to be successful in a launch, but then if all
Yeah.
the feedback is crummy, it doesn't matter. So to me, it's all about the product. But you do need to get exposure. This is a very loud space, so there is a ton
Yeah,
of
it
different
is. Yeah.
players. And I think that the best way is just to be honest, to be authentic, to put yourself out there. Like you're saying, I love that thing you're saying about the Facebook groups. I've gotten really involved in the last few months in a number of them. Um, and I think it's just really cool to share the hobby. Even taking a step back, my like recommendation to a lot of founders is, to not even don't focus on throwing it out there, just focus on actually building relationships, you know
Yeah.
get out there. And sometimes you might try stuff that might not work. Like I posted, I said, hey guys, like I'm a marketing consultant, and a lot of you guys I know are trying to launch games. If I can help you with Facebook ads, if I can help you with anything, I'm happy to do that free of charge as just a way to kind of add value. And I thought, oh man, Casey, your inbox is going to be overrun. There's going to be so many people that
No.
are going to take it. And no, that was not the case. but
No.
but it's just a learning process. And I think that I've had, the most enjoyment and fulfillment that I've had is when I kind of almost even took a step back from that and just started talking to people about the games I was playing and the things I was enjoying and the mechanics, and really starting to engage. And that, I think, is kind of the authentic interaction that actually builds relationships, so that someone's like, oh, okay, I know who this Casey guy is. And then, they maybe connect, and you're kind of more than just the game. You're a person that they actually know. So I think it's really positive. And another thing just on the gaming communities is, I just really enjoy the camaraderie too. I love that in games we can get away from politics or religion, orientation, whatever kind of different thing labels or things that people have. Gaming is just about sharing a communal experience together as a group. And so I think that, especially with, things and how the world is today, I think that's really valuable. I genuinely believe in the value of gaming communities, to
Mm.
support each other and uplift other people around, and share feedback, to other designers, to say, hey, this is what I've done. This is what I've seen. I ran into this pitfall. Let me tell you about it so you don't run into that pitfall. And, Jamie obviously runs an incredible blog where he helps, an immense amount to young people that are going through this Kickstarter journey to kind of avoid some of those pitfalls. But I think that that's a really, meaningful thing for everyone to do, to share whatever kind of wisdom they can.
Okay. Have you got a price?
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna be $20. So the game is gonna be $20, and we might, have some slight, for multiple units, we might scale that back a little bit. But that's what we're looking at. It's a small game, and we're gonna try to kind of keep that pretty set. And in terms of stretch goals, I don't think we're gonna go too crazy. I think we're gonna try to add some stuff that we think is valuable and interesting. One of the things that we've heard from a lot of people that we play tested with, when we kind of asked them what type of stuff might you be interested in, they liked the idea of, instead of just including a promo card, including a variable promo card. So that, say you have 10 promo cards and it's randomized
Hmm.
throughout the deck. People expressed they thought that would be really interesting. And so, that is going to take a little bit of design time to put that together. But again,
Yeah.
we thought we'd pin that. That seemed to me like a cool kind of like stretch goal type of thing. Like, okay, yeah, if we hit this milestone, then we'll kind of, pass on the savings that we get from being able to have a larger order by, putting this thing together. So.
And are you going to be shipping worldwide as well?
Yeah, so right now we're thinking US and areas in Europe, and I'm continuing to learn, and the shipping world with Kickstarter is kind of crazy.
Yes, it
um,
is.
so so I'm trying to make sure that we don't run into any pitfalls. The number one reason that I hear that most Kickstarters run into trouble is shipping. Everyone says, I've talked to a ton of people on this, and they say no matter how confident you are with a number, add 2 months to it in terms of expected date. Just add 2 months, period. Because if you deliver your product faster, people will be happy. But if you're 6 months overdue, that's not good. Um, so
Yeah, I've seen a lot though that are 6 months over, and people are just like, okay. I got excited during the campaign. You're telling me I'm now getting a game. I kind of forgot about the game. I was
yeah,
I've seen the kind of the community, and everyone's like, "Yay, yeah, this was amazing, brilliant, this is fantastic," and then everybody goes their separate ways, and then the community board goes quiet, and then it's like, "Oh, we're getting a game. Oh, I forgot about us getting a game. I was just getting excited about the community and talking to people and changing my badge name and stuff like that kind of thing." So it's good. It's all kind of good fun. Yeah, shipping is funny because I think the latest thing about shipping is them talking about charging shipping after the show, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
people are kind of like saying, well, it's it's $20 and shipping will be charged once the pledge manager's up, and I think that's to do with. Well, it's to do with a couple of things. I think it's to do with the cut that Kickstarter are taking because they were taking it on obviously the full funding amount. So if you've budgeted particular amounts for shipping, you could end up getting a percentage kind of whacked off, which
Yeah.
isn't great. I mean, the other side of it is probably be not very nice to find out that you've paid, $30 for a game to find out the shipping's another $25 on top.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that. Yeah, we're gonna
No.
charge it up front. If we have to take a slightly marginally lower cut, we take a slightly marginally lower cut.
Yeah,
But
okay.
I definitely think transparency is important. We will charge for shipping, and that will just be part of it. Probably be a couple dollars domestically and slightly higher internationally. I think because of the type of game we have, shipping shouldn't be a huge price issue, right? We're not shipping something like Gloomhaven, that is a massive box. So
Let's face it, there's most national, international companies out there aren't shipping boxes the size of Gloomhaven, to be perfectly honest.
it's the stuff of I think Gloomhaven boxes is kind of the stuff of legend at this point.
I think they're using disused Gloomhaven boxes as potential affordable housing for people trying to get on the housing ladder for the first time, because the storage space is good and generally the room sizes are on average are bigger, um, which is the way to go.
Yeah.
No, I mean, best of luck for the campaign when it
Thank you.
comes round.
Yeah, thank you.
If people have listened tonight and they've went, this actually sounds it's $20, $20, isn't it?
Yep.
Do you know how much that is in pounds? That's about £4.50. It's not. That's a lie. It's about £17 because we destroyed our exchange rate. But that's so probably another £10 on top of that for shipping, £27. That's not an awful lot of money for what looks like. And have a look at the game because it looks interesting. As I say, where can they find you on the internets
Yeah.
if they want to find you, Mr. Hill?
Yeah, so we're basically Arkon Game at everywhere. So our website is arkongame.com. If you want to find us on Facebook, it's Arkon Game. If you want to find us on Twitter, it's Arkon Game. Instagram, it's Arkon Game. And you can search us on Board Game Geek at just type in Arkon. We have our listing there. So that's where you can go in and check out some of our art, and we have a whole bunch of, both artwork, some videos, some playthroughs on our Facebook group. So if you want to check some of that out and watch some people playing, look at the actual cards, or we have a video guy who's done some neat animations, who's the one designing our Kickstarter video, of the archer firing the bow and the orc screaming and just kind of fun stuff like that. So yeah, cruise on by, and if you want to test it out, we have the print and play up. So, another thing, anyone who wants to say, all right, well, is this really different? Is this really unique? We'd love for you to test it and, give us your feedback on that too. So that's available. You can go on to our Facebook and you can find that print and play too to get access to it.
Excellent. Well, we will take all of these links and we will put them in the show notes so that we have notes to show.
Great.
If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, and bless you all for all of you that do. I have no idea why you keep doing it, but thank you very much. It must be, I don't know, because it's coming up to Christmas or something like that. You must have all heard it's my birthday next week, so you're all being very, very kind to me just now. You can go on to Twitter, which is We're Not Wizards. You can go on to Facebook, which again is We're Not Wizards. You can go onto YouTube and search for We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast, and you will find us because, basically our lovely podcast host Podbean automatically put all our episodes up onto YouTube because they're cool like that. You can email us magic@we'renotwizards.com. You can find us on Instagram. Guess what? We're Not Wizards. You can find us on Stitcher and Spreaker and Acast and all these lovely little kind of podcast catchy places. If you like what you've heard tonight, and you want to drop us a subscription at Apple Podcasts, that would be absolutely fantastic of you. If you want to take it to the next level and decide that you really, really like us and you want to give us a review, then I guarantee that you will actually have a fantastic Christmas. And if you don't, then you can send me a complaint letter in writing to the address that we leave at the bottom of the show. If you are going to leave us a review, remember, don't give us 10 because that makes me very big-headed. Don't leave us a 1 because that'll make us cry. But leave us a 5 because it's in the middle, kind of in the average, because we are very average. But the person who's not been average tonight is the rather fantastic, the rather wonderful Mr. Casey Hill. So thank you very, very much for coming on. Best of luck with the campaign. We'll be keeping an eye on this one because I'm a sucker for a good bit of art, and I do love games which aren't Magic the Gathering, that are card based. So I'm going to put it that way. That Magic the Gathering joke's gone on far too far. But no, thank you very, very much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome, thank you. Likewise.
There are only a couple more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Casey?
No.
Fantastic. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So as I say, it's a goodbye from, was it a third? A third of the Hill family involved in this Arkon game. So say goodbye, Casey.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, and it's a great conversation.
Thank you. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s. If you are interested in picking up something new in terms of an IP, which sounds like it's different, which looks fantastic, I'd advise you go and give their game a little look when it comes rolling round in February. We will certainly be making everybody aware of his existence when it does launch in the Kickstarter on the February's the 1st. But until the next time, goodbye. Say bye, Casey.
Bye.